welcome. You're watching NDTV 24/7. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. This is a program in which we talk about diabetes. We talk about heart issues. We basically put health at the center of this conversation. Now, COVID-19 has shaken up the world in more ways than one. While COVID-19 has given rise to new challenges, uncertainties, the pandemic has also yielded some valuable lessons. What we eat, our exercise habits, and general hand-washing hygiene awareness, also necessary, have garnered greater focus. Now, while dealing with COVID, we overlook the fact that people's lifestyles were severely disrupted as well. As a result, the metabolic problems have become more common. Unhealthy eating habits, being at home all day, not much physical activity, work from home, parenting from home, all of this meant a lot of mental toll as well. And now, even the fear of contracting the virus, especially with kids in healthcare settings, etc., all adversely impacting your body. In more ways than one, it is showing in way of diabetes sometimes with way of your heart diseases. That's why a multi-sectoral approach, promoting healthier diets, increasing physical activity, can actually help slowing down what many are calling is a diabetic endemic and also heart diseases in the country. Let me introduce the panel now. Joining us today is Dr. Joe George. He is MD, DNB, MD Endo, Chairman and Medical Director at the EndoAb Group of Institutions in Kozhikode. Also with us is Dr. Puneet Saxena. He is the ND, FICP, FRCP, Senior Professor and Unit Head, SMS College, Medical College and Hospital. He has an Asha Diabetics Clinic in Jaipur as well, Chief Consultant over there. Dr. B. Ramesh, MD/DM Cardiology, Professor and Head of Cardio Department at the Apollo Hospitals in Bengaluru. Welcome to the program. Thank you all for your valuable time. Let me take the first question to Dr. George. Now, Dr. George, one question that often gets asked now, and really health has become so central to drawing room conversations these days in all households. And people often wonder, is there an association or a relationship perhaps between blood glucose control and COVID-19 outcomes altogether? Is there a relation?
Let me start with one point. The COVID infection as such does not increase the risk. The risk is not increased in a diabetic patient. Once infected with COVID, his risk of hospitalization is more, his chance of contracting some complication is more, his chance of getting ICU admission is more, and the chance of death is also more. From a US study, it was seen that a non-diabetic person, the chance of getting infected or death was 6.2% in a hospitalized person, while all diabetics, the mortality was around 14.8%.
Wow.
There too, those patients who were uncontrolled, the chance of death was around 29 to 30%. Again, another study from UK also, they found that as the glycemic control worsened in a diabetic patient, as seen by A1C control, the mortality and the chance of ICU admission and the complications were higher. So in a nutshell, we can say that better the glycemic control, the chance of complications and chance of death from COVID is much less as in a non-diabetic person.
I see. So that's a good distinction for people to actually keep in mind. Let me take the next question to Dr. Saxena. Then how has COVID-19 impacted younger population? We know that type 2 diabetes seen generally in young people. Do you think that also COVID-19 could be a trigger there as well? Or there are other reasons why we see younger people now contracting diabetes?
Yeah, we saw in the pandemic that the younger population was affected and they carried severe mortality and morbidity both. Right? And as far as the diabetes is concerned, we saw that because of COVID, the younger population, they showed symptoms of diabetes during the acute phase, and many of them, they developed diabetes and they had it for the remaining period of their life then. So probably the COVID put so much stress on the body, and the viral-induced damage to the insulin production and sensitivity led to the development of diabetes, or maybe unmasking of diabetes in the young population.
I see.
And also because we use so many drugs basically for treating COVID, and steroid was
Steroids.
also one of the main drugs which was used in COVID in large numbers. And not only that, antibiotics and other medications, they all were diabetogenic. So we saw a large younger population developing diabetes during the COVID time.
I'd like to go to Dr. Ramesh next. Dr. Ramesh, more people experienced high blood pressure in response to COVID-19 pandemic compared to before. Is it just the side effects of the medicines, as we've been talking about when it came to diabetes, or stress also, do you think, could or could not be induced by COVID, or isolation could have been a factor there?
COVID pandemic was a different period wherein our entire population was subjected to a high stress, and the stress was because of the COVID infection happening in the neighborhood or at family, resulting in loss of life and morbidity, and this resulted in increased, hypertension, palpitations, and anxiety-related disorder, and also the lifestyle of the population was totally different. People were confined to home without doing any exercise. Food habits also changed, resulting in increased weight gain. Obesity was noted during this period, and increased awareness of health in the form of checking the saturation and pulse rate by oximeter, and as an extension, BP recording also was more in the entire population. So many asymptomatic hypertensives were detected during pandemic. And also those people who suffer from COVID, they were treated with the steroids, which can add on to the hypertension, new onset hypertension. So all these factors played a role in increased detection of hypertension during COVID pandemic.
Let me go to Dr. George next. Now, looking at the increasing number of people with diabetes, should blood glucose checks be made mandatory then? Should blood glucose be tested in all patients who are hospitalized and should be considered as a fifth vital sign that needs actually monitoring?
See, here again, you have to answer it in two parts. One is whether it should be made mandatory to all hospital admitted patients. Yes, that is true. But let me tell you, 25 years back when I was doing my MBBS itself, it was mandatory to see that all admitted patients, whatever may be the condition, had at least one single blood sugar value in place. So that was always there. And I think, and I'm sure that it's still being practiced in all hospitals and all admission places in India. Now coming to blood sugar as a vital sign. Vital sign means even if the person is not a diabetic, should we continue monitoring the person all through his admission process or when he is admitted in the hospital? That's a difficult question to answer because every patient who doesn't have any risk factor, I wouldn't actually advocate that. But considering the high risk population, like a person who is more than 30, who has a strong family history of diabetes, who is obese, having other features of metabolic syndrome, or having severe infection, and also on some drugs which can increase blood sugars. In those patients, I feel it should be made a kind of vital sign where a regular monitoring should be put in place so that the doctor is able to recognize the increasing blood sugar that may happen in the course of hospital admission.
Let me go to Dr. Saxena next. Now, if you have type 2 diabetes and lifestyle changes like exercise and healthy eating haven't done enough to actually help you, you might need medication as well to get your blood sugar under control. What type of medication protocol is there to be followed when it comes to type 2 diabetes management?
Yeah, you have rightly said that the first line of action is lifestyle modification and modification of the diet. And if you follow it nicely, you can reduce the blood glucose levels to an extent. And ideally, if we are talking about the protocol, we advise our patients to follow the lifestyle and exercise and dietary advice for first 3 months. The blood glucose levels are not very high, and probably they can control their blood glucose by these two interventions alone. But just in case if the blood glucose is not controlled by these two interventions, the medications are advised, and you have different protocols basically. And the most widely accepted and followed protocol is given by the American Diabetes Association, which we follow here in India also. And then you have different protocols like given by the International Diabetes Federation, our own guidelines given by the RSDI, which is a body for diabetologists in India. So all these guidelines, they advocate use of drugs in a stepwise manner, where you can choose the drugs, and then you can choose the drugs depending on the other illnesses which the patient has. Suppose somebody is having cardiac illness, or somebody is having kidney disease, or maybe liver disease, then you can choose the drugs according to that also. But there are definite guidelines to follow and to advise and advocate the medications.
All right. So do take advice of your doctors before you start Googling everything and trying to come up with solutions on your own. I think that's a good note to take a break on. When we return, we'll continue this conversation on how to deal with diabetes and also hypertension, especially in these times. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We are talking about beating diabetes, facts versus myths over here, and hypertension, blood pressure, really such a crucial element in all of this. Which brings me to the next question. Let me take that to Dr. Ramesh there. Dr. Ramesh, hypertension, serious health condition, and a lot of people have called it a silent killer as well. Now, is this hereditary, and should a person worry about whether or not they're going to pass it on to their kids?
See, first question is hypertension, is it a serious condition? Definitely it is a very serious health condition. See, it is called as a silent killer, and the hypertension damages three important organs. One is heart, second is kidneys, third is brain. In the heart, it can cause cardiovascular disease, heart failure, and increased incidence of heart attacks. And in kidney, it can result in chronic kidney disease, and in brain, it can cause cerebrovascular accident and stroke. These are the dreaded complications of a hypertension. Most of the people remain asymptomatic. Regarding the genetics and hypertension, see, hypertension is a multifactorial. The environmental factors like lifestyle, obesity, and increased consumption of salt can result in early onset hypertension. And regarding the genetics, it is a multi-genetic problem. There is no single gene responsible for the onset of hypertension.
I see. Diet, you said, also plays such a huge role. So let me take the next question on that to Dr. George there. You know, people with diabetes are always in dilemma about their diet choices. Is it leading to too much sugar or less sugar? How do I manage all of this? What kind of person, what kind of food, beg your pardon, do you think a person should be eating while taking insulin at least? And how does one monitor the diet on a regular basis?
Yeah, if you ask me to summarize a diabetic diet in one sentence, it is just a balanced diet without simple sugars. So you just avoid sugars and take a balanced diet. That is diabetic diet. But then why is it that there is so much confusion? The reason is that when you look into the macronutrient components of diet, it includes carbohydrate, proteins, and fat. It is the carbohydrate that leads to increase in blood sugar. So when you take more carbohydrate, you need more insulin. And when you take less carbohydrate, you need less insulin. So in a person who is taking insulin, so they need to count the carb and adjust the dose. That is especially true of a person who is a type 1 diabetic. Or the person should be regularizing his meal with a fixed timing, with a fixed amount of carb in it, so that the fluctuation doesn't happen. So these are the things you can. So diet-wise, when you look at it, the macronutrient component, the general agreement is that the carbohydrate component in a balanced diet should be 40 to 60% in a normal person who is a non-diabetic. But in a diabetic person also, there are certain experts who say that low-fat diet and high-fat diet, low-carb diet and all those things. But in the long run, it is recommended to have a diet which is around 40% of carbohydrate and then 1 gram per kg of protein and the rest coming from fat. There again, you have to understand is that just any fat is not good, any carb is not good and not bad. So when you look at the macronutrient component also, the fat, the worst is the trans fat that is in the food. followed by simple sugars, then saturated fatty acids. So whatever may be the diet, the percentage, even when you look into the fat component of the diet, it should come mainly from the monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids, and the carb should come from the complex carbohydrate. That's more important.
But let me go to Dr. Saxena, staying with diabetes over here and obesity mostly. Now, obesity is becoming quite common. It can cause serious health problems. We all know that by now. But can the bariatric surgery actually be helpful, and how does bariatric surgery actually work? For who is it actually recommended, and what kind of people should actually stay away from it completely?
Yeah, very nicely asked, because obesity is another pandemic kind of situation, and it is the common denominator for all chronic illnesses like diabetes, hypertension, cardiac disease, and maybe stroke, asthma, and arthritis. So it's a common denominator for all these kind of situations. And if we can reduce obesity or maybe prevent obesity, especially in the younger population, then we can control diabetes. As far as bariatric surgery is concerned, which is the weight reduction surgery and advice for people who are morbidly obese, means their weight is very high. So that it is advice for those people. So it's basically a weight reduction surgery, and there are different procedures to it. Basically, like you resect the part of stomach, or you create some bypasses in the intestine, so you reduce a state of malabsorption also. So it's a enforced weight reduction by which you achieve by bariatric surgery, and then it helps as the weight reduces, the diabetes also is controlled, and the blood glucose levels, they return to either they are reduced or they return to normal. And besides the weight reduction, there are other mechanisms that bariatric surgery can help, which is basically increasing the insulin sensitivity and insulin production in the body, which and rest to the beta cells of the pancreas, which starts secreting more insulin. So that kind of situation we achieve when we do bariatric surgery for morbidly obese diabetic patients. So it helps in remission and control of diabetes in obese patients.
I see. Good to get that cleared out. Let me go to Dr. Ramesh next. On most of the patients with high blood pressure, docs, suffer from diabetes. What complications can then high blood pressure actually create in people who are already diabetic?
Hypertension increases the insulin resistance, resulting in increased incidence of diabetes. Both hypertension and diabetes, they increase the incidence of atherosclerosis, resulting in the vascular disease in the form of coronary artery disease or cerebrovascular events. And the hypertension, diabetes, obesity, hypertriglyceridemia, and low HDL cholesterol, they constitute a disease syndrome called metabolic syndrome, wherein the incidence of the cardiovascular disease is 5 to 6-fold higher than in a normal person without any diabetes, without hypertension, or without obesity. So these patients should have a proper control of the hypertension. Guideline-based control of hypertension is very important, and adequate control of diabetes is also very important. The blood pressure should be maintained around 120/80. Periodic check of blood pressure is required, and appropriate medicines and lifestyle modifications are of paramount importance. And diabetes has to be checked periodically, and 3 months average sugar, that is HbA1c, should be done once in 4 months at least, and it should be maintained less than 7.
As a nutshell, can I just say, precaution is better than cure over here. If we all focus on a better lifestyle, better eating habits, we can actually avoid getting one disease then leading to the other, and then it gets a vicious circle, really. But it's been an interesting discussion. Thank you so much, Dr. George, Dr. Saxena, and Dr. Ramesh for joining us on the program. Thanks so much.